So, a little bit about this issue of judging others, because it's a hot topic. Most people, when they address this issue, they quote Jesus' words in Matthew 7. Do not judge, lest you be judged. For in the same manner that you judge, will you be judged, and with the same measure that you measure unto others, will it be measured back again unto you. That verse is famous, and frankly, anyways, that's the one that gets quoted all the time. Generally, whenever someone doesn't like someone else calling them out on something or calling out somebody else on something, they quote that verse and say, well, you can't judge me, or you can't judge this person. And this sentiment is backed up in several other places in the Bible, notably the book of James is very stern on the issue. It says, but you, who are you to judge your brother? And it's very clear. James says there is one lawgiver and judge. One, meaning God, of course. In other places in the Bible, it's very similar. It says, do not go on passing judgment before the time, but wait until the Lord comes, who will disclose the motives of men's hearts, and then each one will receive his reward from God. That's Paul in Corinthians. And however, there are several verses on the flip side as well. Paul also said in another place in Corinthians, he said, do you not know that we will judge the world? Who's he talking about? Him and Silas or him and Timothy? I think he's talking about everybody he's addressing, right? Which, take it how you want. It could mean you. And then he also says, do you not know that we will judge angels? And then he goes on to say, is it really true that there is not one man among you who cannot have enough sense to judge between his brothers? And he says, in this I do not praise you. All right? He's getting on their case because he's like, is it really the case that there's not one guy among you who can make accurate judgments? Because he was talking about legal matters, because they were going to court outside of the church in the world. He was rebuking them for it. He's like, you guys can't figure this stuff out. So he was saying you should be able to judge righteously, which echoes Jesus' words in the book of John, who said, when you judge, judge with righteous judgment. So, is Jesus contradicting himself? No. I don't know. You be the judge. And there are many other places in the Bible, like Paul says in Romans, he says, I think it's Romans, I am confident that you are all able to admonish each other. What does admonish mean? It means like if you see somebody doing something that's not good for them, you say, hey, this is not so good for you. You need to check this. Right? And anyone who is a student of friendship or relationships knows that that's an act of love. If you see somebody doing something that's harmful to themselves, you call them on it. Why? Because you love them and care them. For instance, I had a really, really super good friend, and I saw the warning signs, and I neglected to say anything about it, and he killed himself. Right? I don't mean to say right. Sorry, that's just a figure of speech, because you wouldn't know. Let me tell you, that's what happened. And I decided after that, I'm never going to let that happen again. If I see somebody that needs to be admonished, I'm going to admonish them because I don't want to lose any more friends. Right? And in my own, sorry, I don't mean to say right like that. I just got rebuked on that, so I'm not going to say right anymore. So let me tell you, there are things in my life that I wish people had admonished me for, and they didn't, and now I'm suffering because of it. Okay? So admonishing people, why? Because none of us can see perfectly clearly, and we need each other. Not only do we need each other's encouragement and support and love and fellowship and friendship, but we also need people to call us on our crap. It's just the fact. We're supposed to do that, and it's an act of love when we do. If that never happens in a relationship, it's not a very realistic or healthy relationship. Okay? And there are other verses, like one of my favorite ones in Proverbs says, do you see those who are stumbling ahead to slaughter? Oh, hold them back. if you say, we did not know this, does he not know it who searches the hearts, and will he not recompense a man according to his deeds? In other words, it's like if you see somebody heading for the cliff and you don't say anything, you're in trouble. And there's this famous passage, really, I think it's in Ezekiel, where God's like, okay, if the evil people are doing stuff and you tell them to stop doing stuff, and they do, good for you. If you tell them to stop doing the bad stuff and they don't, well, that's on them. And he says, but if you don't tell them and they die, God's pretty stern. He says, that's on you. Right? I don't mean to say right. Sorry, I'm trying not to do that. He says, but if you do tell them and then they don't quit and they die anyways, well, that's their own fault. So the Bible, when people just stick with that one verse, like you can't judge me, right? Don't judge unless you be judged. They're illustrating the fact that they don't actually know the Bible, of course, because it's easy to quote one verse that everybody and their mother quotes. But the Bible actually has many, 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 many verses that go both ways. So, how do we deal with that? We deal with it by living in a relationship with the Lord who really knows what the best thing is in every situation. Really. Because what is best for one person in one situation may not be best for another person in a similar situation. We have to follow the Lord to know those little nuances and those little differences in our own lives, as well as in the lives of the people that we care about. And when it gets down to that level, you realize that everybody has a limit where they start to think that something is wrong. So when people say, don't judge me, you can't judge me, what they're really saying is, I disagree with you because I'm not wrong. Because I guarantee that those people, when they reach that line for themselves and they see somebody else doing something that they deem wrong enough, they will say something about it. The same people that say, well, you can't judge me, don't judge me what I do. If they see somebody doing something that they feel is bad enough, then they will say something. Everybody has that line. Wherever that line is, now that line changes for everybody. Some people think that everything is wrong, and they'll call anybody and everybody around them. Some people don't hardly think anything is wrong, and so the line is way the heck over here, and they'll only call somebody if it's like extra, extra bad. But pretty much everybody will call somebody on things that they feel are wrong or bad. So when people say, oh, you can't judge me, well, they're actually being hypocritical, because they will. It just depends on what point. So at that point, it becomes an issue of you don't have the right to say anything about it. It becomes an issue of what is really right or wrong. Which brings me back to the point of who knows what is really right or wrong? Us? No, God does. Which is why we have to live in that close, all the time relationship with Him to really, truly be able to determine what is right or wrong and when to say something about it. Thanks, and have a fabulous day.